And I think because of that ease of access, right? Like you said, you can get an avocado flown in from Mexico. You can get vanilla beans from like Tahitian vanilla beans. And if you like, it shocks me. You at Nature's Basket or all these fancy food stores, you see nariyal pani from Thailand. I'm like, why? We live on the coast. Why are you?
Yeah.
And it's like $400 for this nariyal, which is cling wrapped and all of that. And we've become so wasteful because of this ease of access, right? We don't even have to step out to get food anymore.
Yeah.
Like one click, you have groceries at your doorstep in under 10 minutes sometimes if you have a fulfillment center in your neighborhood.
Yeah. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. It's another week, it's another day, it's another episode where you can get some food for thought. And I mean that literally, because everywhere I go now, this is kind of conversation buzzing around about food. I mean, so many options, right? When it comes to just restaurants, it comes to cafes, it comes to finding your niche within the cafe, right? Are you a kind of savory menu? Are you more of the baked products, the baked goodies? And it just feels like food is taken up such a large part of our conversation, but not always, well, ironically, in a healthy way. The conversation around food is not healthy, even though we talk about healthy food. It's always about my diet being better than yours, or trying to copy a certain diet, or doing certain things that are told that are good for you, whether it's about fasting, it's about superfoods, whether it's about fibrous, whether it's about carnivore diet, whether it's about what's it called, the mock meat or the protein supplements, or so many things. And where do we draw the line? When is food a personal choice? When is food what you eat because you enjoy the process? You enjoy it, you eat it with your family, you ate it because your family made it, and you have all these various relationships, relationships which go back so many years, which, recipes have been passed on. You kind of celebrate it. There's a time you eat it. There's a time you get access to those ingredients. But now everything's changed, from the food production system to distribution, to access, to supermarkets, to delivery apps. The conversation, the nature of food has just changed. And how does that affect us? The scale of population that we have in India, 1+ billion people. Now there is ultra processed foods being unleashed on us. Are we going to see a replication of what happened in America with juvenile diabetes, the obesity epidemic, and so many things health related to that? And then on the other extreme is health related conversations around food. To talk to me about that, I have got Arina Suchde, who's chef, an author, a mixologist, a blogger, to talk about her experience with food, because she's spent many, many years cooking, for the joy of cooking, for the joy of eating, for the love of food, her relationship with food from companion to coping mechanism. And she takes me through that journey of food of hers. She talks about how there are certain trends which are not good for human beings, the importance of enjoying food on a personal level and appreciating what you put into your body just for the joy of appreciation. And she, of course, has a new book out, which is called the No-Waste Kitchen Cookbook, telling you how not to use how to use the ingredients which you typically would waste in the cooking process. Also, how we can salvage a lot of the materials that are thrown in the process under the guise of perfection and wanting the best looking fruit and vegetable. It's a fun conversation. And if you like food, which, okay, some of us just eat for the sake of eating, some of us eat for the sake of others, some of us eat for the joy of eating. So all of you will enjoy this conversation with Arina. I was really, really glad to talk to her, and a lot of my points which I made, which of course I do, were supported, and some of them were shot down, and I got some good points to think about as well, and I'm sure you will. As always, I appreciate you being a part of the podcast, tuning in every week. Do support it by going on whichever platform and giving it a rating if that option is available. Do like and share it with people who are likely to like it, and do subscribe to the YouTube channel, because it helps put out the word and get this conversation and others like it out there, and get the message, spread the cheese, spread the jam, spread the butter, spread the love. Thank you, and God bless. Arina, welcome to the podcast. It's lovely to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, when someone talks about food and talks about their love for cooking and their experience and relationship with food over years, and in someone like in your case, for 20 plus years, you've uh, been involved with food. But the concepts and terms being used nowadays, like food lover, foodgasm, foodie, it just feels like it's gone to a level which I can't personally comprehend, because in my opinion, food is something you eat, which is very personal, something which you kind of are conditioned to, but also develop a taste for as a result of your family, your community, and the region you live in. And but now more and more, I feel food is becoming a sense of identity. So what is your journey with food been, and why are we sitting here today where food is a political issue, or food is an issue of where you align yourself, your ideology, and who you hang out with, and why you don't hang out with certain people?
We've touched a very, very complicated and sensitive issue. But
May as well.
Food, again, my whole life revolves around food. And I guess it's that way with a lot of cultures, especially. But with India, if you see with all the communities, food is like at the center of everything, right? Whether it's a celebration, it's the morning, there's specific, communities have specific dishes attached to specific, festivals, to specific days. Food is at the center of everything for us, right? And so in my case, I grew up in a Gujarati family where, again, there's just so much food around you all the time.
Yeah.
And I've been cooking since I was like maybe 9 years old. I could cook a full meal by the time I was 9 or 10.
That's impressive. Yeah.
It kind of came from I wouldn't say necessity, because I lived in a joint family, so there was always somebody to cook. But in my case, it was also the curiosity of how this can be turned into this, and also from the aspect of I didn't want to be dependent on anybody to get access to my junk food. I grew up with 90s junk food, which I'm not very proud of now.
Yeah, I mean, we all kind of grew up in the 90s eating Good Day and Marie Biscuit, not really knowing that it's junk, right?
I was a full processed food baby.
Yeah.
But, as much as my mom hated it, I still found ways to go and eat packaged stuff and eat Maggie and
yeah, let's
all
be honest,
that.
Maggie
I still love
brilliant.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still love all of that junk food, but now I eat it in moderation, and I've kind of trained my brain to like shift focus towards healthier things. And my relationship with food has been very, very complicated, because when I'm sad, I need food. When I'm happy, I need food. My emotional well-being somewhere has become very intertwined with food somehow. And it's weird. Like, it plays in, like when I was in therapy and I was talking to my therapist about how I had, on bad days, I've had meltdowns over like tiny things going wrong with my food. On most days, I'll eat whatever is given. I'll eat junk, I'll eat healthy, I'll eat everything. But there are certain times where I'm just maybe in a bad space mentally and emotionally, and I'll be fine with everything. And then one tiny thing goes wrong with my meal, and I will literally have a meltdown. And it was crazy, because she made me realize, she's like, you know what, for you, probably food has been your only constant your whole life growing up with. No matter what you've gone through since childhood, in your adulthood, everything, food has been your only go-to. Whether it's your crutch, it's your support, it's your everything.
So she's like, companion and coping mechanism.
It became everything for me. And so she's like, because something goes wrong in that one tiny aspect, even like one ingredient being not right, or one component of that particular meal not being right, and that's your last straw, and that's why your whole meltdown happens. It's not literally because of the food, it's all the other stuff that has built up. But because food is your only constant, and you think that's been something that you relied on your whole life, I used to have meltdowns with just something going wrong with my meal on that particular day. So I think overall as a culture, we have a very, very complicated relationship with religion also, right? Different religions have different rules when it comes to food.
Yeah.
And then somehow politics has gotten jumbled up, because religion, politics, all of that is somewhere, it's all intertwined and messed up. And so I think, but I'm one of those firm believers. I grew up vegetarian. And I believe that everyone just should be able to eat what they want to eat, especially as adults. Yes, I know X thing is bad for me and I shouldn't be eating it too much, but again, it's my choice. Let me decide whether I want to eat and live or die, or, you can obviously tell people out of concern, but this whole thing of this activism when it comes to being vegetarian or vegan, it really pisses me off. Like, I'm one of those vegetarians that actually gets excited with really great dishes that are meat, seafood, all of that. I order, food for my friends when we're dining out.
Right.
I'll get excited about a well-cooked piece of meat, because for me, it is the technical aspect and the flavor combination, or the, the particular ingredient that fascinates me. I don't want to eat it, that's fine, but I'm not going to go around telling people that you shouldn't be eating it either, or the other way around. You don't shove your chicken in my face, I won't shove my paneer in yours. For me, it's been that simple. I think food's just, it's so personal. Everybody should just be allowed to eat whatever the hell they want.
Yeah, the thing, as you mentioned, for me as well, food has been, fortunately plentiful, but it was never, in a sense, gluttonous in that way, right? It wasn't like it's a form of status, because growing up, it was, we come from a family which the cuisine is from South Canada, so it's a more, not, I wouldn't say coastal, but it is from that region, which is a lot like the Kerala coast, right? So there's a lot of coconut, a lot of vegetables. Unlike some of the other diets in Karnataka, which are a little drier, which are just by virtue of the region, and as a result, there was this kind of, what does chicken taste like? Because we grew up in a vegetarian household as well. And until my grandmom was alive, we kind of would sneak in a little bit of tandoori chicken and we'd feel really proud of ourselves. But, fast forward to today where we're quite chill. Like, I live with my folks. My wife eats all kinds of meat. My sister eats meat. I've become vegetarian now over the past 2.5 years. And I'm not trying to draw to my personal choice, but this idea of food is it's never been that I define myself by what I eat at home. There is, of course, South Indians tend to lean more towards rice. There are some people who lean more towards wheat and chapatis, and some people towards bread. So regionally, there was a certain set of elements that defined a diet of a community, right? Whether what's grown in the region, what's available, as you said, certain cultural preferences, certain religious dictates. But now, because there's so much globalization when it comes to ingredients, right? You can get like wasabi, you can get like horseradish, the wasabi thing you can get it in the store around the corner, or you can get feta cheese, or you can get peanut butter, and these things weren't available in the 90s so easily, right? You'd pay a pretty premium to get it.
Or you waited for somebody to come from the States or from...
Which in itself was exciting, right? Like now it's like the gifts are even more fascinating. Like, oh my God, did you get the PS5? And earlier it was like, what, you got me a can of Coke? Like in the 90s, Coke in a can was not available in India. But I'm just saying, by virtue of the expansion of food choices, I feel, and this is, again, please correct me based on your culinary kind of experience. It's because we, again, feel there's a certain identity of being seen eating a certain kind of food. Like, I still remember when I went to Goa back in, say, 2005 and 6, I'm the kind of guy, if chicken tastes like chicken, it's not tasty. It needs to taste like masala, right? It needs to be completely disguised under a flavor, which I'm like, my God, this masala is so good. My friend's like, do you like the chicken or the masala? I'm like, the masala, dude. Let's make peace with that. But if I would order, like, say, butter chicken, God forbid, my friends are like, what the hell are you doing? Order butter chicken in Goa? Like, there was such a stigma, because in Goa, you have to be eating the Goan cuisine, like fish and shrimp and squid and whatnot. And there was such a kind of, you eat it to fit in. And I feel that in some way has gone, because as you said, there are so many options now. So you can go to Goa in the thick of the most popular seafood restaurant and still probably get away with like a really good local dal made by a Bihari, right? Because that's how, so many people have moved around geographically. But on the flip side of that, there is a different kind of stigma attached to food, which you just pointed out, right? With this activism around food, like you have the meat eaters going, "Oh my God, mine the carnivore diet, the paleo diet," and so everything becomes a label by which you define your position, your exposure, your ability to kind of be seen as a worldly person, and someone who's like, "Yeah, I ate this shiitake mushroom and I ate this Wagyu beef," and I'm like, so after a point. What does food, one is food is nourishment. So maybe can we talk about the various aspects of food? One is the basic human need for food to survive. And then maybe we can talk about the other representations, which you briefly talked about, which is the religious implication, right? There are certain things you eat when you're celebrating a certain festival, a certain kind of food that is served when someone passed away in the family, and there's certain things at birth, certain things at weddings. But maybe just to start with the most fundamental, which is food is nourishment. And can we from there go into your idea, which has fueled the book you've written, which is the idea of food wastage?
Right, like you said, it's become so excessive, right? Our generation, especially like from 90s onwards, access to food from all over the world just became so easy. Seasons they're still not followed sometimes, right? Because there's cold storage, there's ways to grow stuff in greenhouses with temperature controlled, spaces where you can grow anything even without it being in season. And I think because of that ease of access, right? Like you said, you can get an avocado flown in from Mexico, you can get vanilla beans from like Tahitian vanilla beans, and if you like, it shocks me. You at Nature's Basket or all these fancy food stores, you see nariyal pani from Thailand. I'm like, why? We live on the coast. Why are you? Yeah. And it's like $400 for this nariyal, which is cling wrapped and all of that. And we've become so wasteful because of this ease of access, right? We don't even have to step out to get food anymore.
Yeah.
Like one click, you have groceries at your doorstep in under 10 minutes sometimes if you have a fulfillment center in your neighborhood.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that one of the biggest reasons that we've learned, like we've just become very indifferent towards food waste. And for me, that was one of the biggest eye-openers maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where food waste, all of us, when you're growing up and it's just your first default reaction to food waste is what extra food left over from the previous meal. Like dal left over the next day or rice or from that aspect, like cooked food that's left over, that's called food waste.
Yeah.
What none of us realize that the food waste actually starts right from the farm level. Because we eat food we'll eat a plate of something in under 5 minutes, we'll scarf it down.
Yeah.
But we don't realize how much time, physical labor, effort, all of that has gone into growing that food that we're eating on our plate, right?
Yeah.
Some things take months or a whole year to grow.
Yeah.
Basic ingredients and veggies and fruits that we eat, we don't realize the amount of planning that goes into growing a carrot, a potato, an onion, just tomato, like all these basic staples that are in our house every day.
Yeah.
And I think if we kind of start looking at the food or ingredients like pre-food, like before our plate, before our refrigerators, I think it's an eye-opener because so much ends up getting wasted, starting from the farm. People want perfect-looking vegetables and fruits, which it baffles me, because what are you going to do with a perfect-looking carrot?
Yeah.
When you're going to chop it up anyways, you're not going to serve it whole to somebody and you're not going to put it up on your mantle. Why am I worried about a wonky and a straight carrot when I'm going to chop it up or puree it or do whatever to it, right? So that first stage is there. The farmer loses out on at least 30% or more of their income, because the person buying it from the farmer to then go down the supply chain doesn't want ugly looking fruits and vegetables. Then again, from the wholesale person, it whittles down to the resale. And from that point A to point B, because of bad storage, because of temperatures, bad transport, more ingredients get ruined. So by the time it actually reaches our fridge, like the final retail thing, so much has been lost on multiple levels. One is the ugly looking fruits and vegetables. Two is the secondary parts of the fruits and vegetables that are perfectly edible, but they don't even reach us. Like beetroot greens, carrot greens, radish greens sometimes do end up on our plates in winters. But sweet potato leaves, so many other plants. Like we haven't even scratched the surface. Bindi leaves are edible. I learned that very late in life. Despite being a chef, I learned very late in life that bindi leaves and sweet potato leaves are edible. So again, those don't reach us. The stems of cauliflower in cities don't reach us. We just get the white cauliflower. We rarely get the stems and the nice leaves. And I don't blame the people in the supply chain because it's more stuff for them to carry. Like even your local sabzi wala, it's so much more bulk for them to carry it to have to then throw away at the end of the day. But if we as consumers start asking for more greens and leaves and stems, they'll be encouraged to buy that from the farmer. Can you imagine, like say one cauliflower, at least 300-ish grams is the stalks and the leaves. More, I would say, depending on the size of the cauliflower. All of that just ends up in a landfill or back in the compost somewhere or being fed to cattle, which is fine. But it's still perfectly nutritious food that can reach us and reach our plates. So we've just become very, very, what's the word? Everyone's just become careless. No one seems to give a shit as to how much food is getting wasted as long as they're getting what they want to eat, right? But we can't go on for that long.
I want to interject for a second here because I think there is something which is this appearance of what you eat, right? I remember when I was in school, taking a full rice and like a vegetable, whether it's a sambar or a vegetable curry or whatever the curry you call it in your family, was not cool. It was not like the thing to do in your like in your dabba when you open it up, when you open your lunchbox. If you have a Nutella sandwich or you have a peanut butter jelly sandwich, it was seen as cool. He has a yummy snack but as a result, like for instance, because it's just been there in our house, like where we cook everything from like bitter gourd with pineapple to different kinds of greens to the greens which are just the leaves, ones with the stem which you kind of eat. Then you have these plants which colocasia. I didn't even know that's something we eat. We call it something else in Kannada, but we make the stem, we make the leaves, we make this thing which so. Now I'm 40 and I kind of appreciate the nutritious value, the kind of depth of our cuisine, but. When you said there's so much potential for food that we kind of just let go because we don't know it's edible, has there been a certain narrative of food that is acceptable, food that is being promoted by a certain set of people or a certain policy that promotes, like say lentils, certain kinds of legumes, certain kinds of grain, certain kinds of main vegetables, but it's because in some way it sounds educational, which is not happening, right? Because if you go to certain rural areas, they will just eat it because they don't, that's their food. But now suddenly you're like, you mentioned drumstick leaves or lady's finger leaves. And it seems like the best analogy I can give you with this is like, yoga suddenly became cool when Americans started doing it. So is it like almost like that when you go there and you see, a certain Indian recipe being made by MasterChef Australia, and they put these things like say lady's finger leaves, or they put like drumsticks, and suddenly Indians or people are like, wow, this is Indian recipe, and we take pride in that. So is there a conflict between narrative and pride and just and lack of information?
I wouldn't say pride or narrative as much. I think it's just lack of information, like you said, right? Not everybody knows that every part of every fruit and vegetable, every secondary part of the crop basically is edible. And I think it literally just comes down to education and doing a little more research.
What I meant by narrative, is like when you look at recipe books, popular recipe books, whatever their names are, cooking shows, you don't like, I'll give you an example. The reason I mentioned narrative, sorry about to cut you off, is but when you go to like say a pub or you go to a bar or do you go to a restaurant, say Asian or you say Indian, there are only like 5 to 10 vegetables, unless you look at, of course, the shiitake mushrooms, or you look at say the edamame beans or whatever, or you look at bamboo shoots, which none of them are from here, like local to this geography. But otherwise it's typically paneer, which is not a vegetable, of course, but then you have peas, you have onions, you have green peppers or bell peppers, and 3-4 other things like that. But clearly there are limited options when you go out to a restaurant, or unless of course you go specifically to like a place where they have a thali and then everything in that thali comes. But I'm saying generally the narrative is that there are certain foods acceptable or certain ingredients that are acceptable in a public setting. Or am I just reading too much into this?
No, I don't think it's a public setting. It's about the cuisine, right? Say now, because you gave the example of Asian restaurants, a lot of Indian ingredients don't fit into that cuisine, don't fit into those dishes. So you won't see them in a mainstream Asian restaurant or say an Italian place, But I think it's that gap of knowledge between, say, the urban and the rural setting. Because if you go to farms, like you said, a lot of crops that we see more commonly is stuff that farmers are encouraged to grow because they are like cash crops, so they grow faster and there's better yield and things like that. And they're not organic. So you'll always see, if you go to farms that are run by the farmers, you'll see a separate patch somewhere closer to their home where they're growing everything organically and so many other things than what they grow in their fields for commercial sale. And you actually want to eat what they're growing for themselves and not what they're actually growing for sale.
Public,
So a lot of it is kind of, I think so overall in like the bigger schemes of things, if you zoom out a little, the whole industrial revolution kind of messed up our food system as well. Most people don't make the connection because for them, then it just became about, finding crops that give you better yield in terms of just bulk production, whether it's good for health, good for the soil, that nobody thought of it back then. Just start growing one crop, which affects the health of the soil, everything around you. It messes up your whole ecosystem because each crop or each thing that you're growing in different seasons works according to nature's timetable, so-called, because then those things kind of replenish the nutrients in the soil that the previous crop needed from the soil, right? So the whole point of seasonal farming is that, right? You let the soil heal on its own with other plants that are meant to be grown in that season. And they're also good for us in terms of what you should be eating in that season, especially in places that you actually have the proper divide of, winter, spring, summer, monsoon, all of that. Those ingredients are meant to keep you nourished and healthy and warm in winter, or these ingredients are supposed to be cooling and good for you during summer. But that whole system with all this whole industrialization of farming is lost because you eat anything any time of the year now because it's because of the GMO seeds or just temperature controlled rooms. All of that is just messed up our whole food system.
That's the strange thing because of this whole idea of getting whatever you want, whenever you want, from wherever you want.
Right.
Because I think my mom was saying sometime about how during the monsoon, because you don't have, access to too many vegetables, there would be certain other things which you would make, which would be, making it out of grain or making a kind of dish which is nutritious but doesn't have vegetables in it. So you kind of become innovative with your, with the things you have access to. But I feel, the cultural component, there are two things I want to kind of understand over here. One is, there's this idea of it's in no particular order, but one side you have the superfoods, right? When people talk about kale or they talk about all these various things which give you a boost, and you see all of those being added on as the key features and these best sellers when it comes to recipes and how to make the best smoothie or how to make the best dish which will jack up your immunity and basically make you lose weight or make you gain muscle and all these various things. And again, you have things with food like fasting, which is an ancient kind of practice in many cultures. And I find it weird that we live in a country where there's a huge percentage of people who don't have food, but then you get to a certain amount of wealth and then you start not eating. I just find it kind of weird. But that's one side is the superfoods, which is this new narrative, right? Where everywhere you have the fungi which everyone's trying to eat and those kind of things. But then you have, say, these recipes, which I was just referring to, like certain groups which live, say, in arid regions would rely more on on drier ingredients, right, which don't need too much water. And then you live in more plush regions, which have more leafy greens, which have more of these other, more options of vegetables. But as a result, you have such diverse recipes which work rich culturally, geographically, right? Like even within, say, the coast of Karnataka, you have so many different kinds of cuisines, right? Like you live in Bangalore, they eat completely different food, the locals here, than what the people from where I came from eat. But we seem to be kind of reducing all of them into one label, South Indian food. And the moment you say South Indian food, you think of a dosa, sambar, or an idli. And honestly speaking, like I've traveled across quite a bit of India or even abroad to Indian restaurants, and I've never eaten the food I get at home. Like people just think, oh, you're South Indian, you eat rasam rice. Okay, that's 1 out of 100 dishes I've eaten growing up, right? So we kind of take away so much depth, and these things have so much, one, just nutritional value, but also so much science to it, right? Like you eat a combination of sour with a little bit of green chili, you eat that vegetable, and they all go together for a certain reason. Now, of course, they call it molecular gastronomy, and they do all these various things to it. But there is a certain balance, right? When there's something sweet, like when you put pineapple in a dish, you cut it out with bitter gourd and you put a little bit of sour. So every dish in its way had a balance, right? Protein, fiber, even with the flavors, the salt, this thing. But now, so my mom makes all of this. My grandma made all of this. But now there's no one in my generation who can cook that food. So one is, while we are embracing this whole new, this trend of healthy food, nutrition and diet and getting fit and time restricted feeding and using this entire algorithm and CGMs to understand what your blood glucose level is, and superfoods and protein, and another side just ignoring what's already there instead of preserving that.
It doesn't think our generation is just forgotten so much of the stuff that maybe our parents grew up eating, the grandparents grew up. They had better quality of life. When I say quality of life, in a different sense, okay, we might have a better quality of life in terms of, technology, infrastructure, all of those conveniences. But when I in this context, I'm talking about quality of life in terms of your own personal health and your body and how you feel about yourself. You'll probably agree, like our grandmoms and grandfathers and all, and parents also started complaining about body ache and this and that at a much later age than we started complaining about all of this. Right? Even little things of getting tired fast or, breaking out, all of those little things, in that sense, they had a much, much better quality of life back then, even though our medical facilities and everything is so much better now. But I think this whole concept of the superfoods and all is just, again, for me, it's just labels, because our country has such amazing ingredients like millets. Right now, again, they're making a comeback. 2023 was the year of millets.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And it's sad that you have to bring all of this back, because they stopped growing millets to grow things like rice and wheat and, corn and all of that. Whereas millets are actually great for the environment. They're great for the soil. They grow with minimal water. They can be grown in a desert. It's just, when I'm saying it out loud and when I discuss these things with other people, it just seems stupid that we've gone backward and now we're having to take a full U-turn and come back to what the previous generations were doing, which is, it's stupid, because we had it in our country all along. All we had to do is listen, remember, and not think it's uncool. That's all it was. And it's great. It's amazing to have exposure to other cuisines from around the world. I love it myself. Like, I love trying different cuisines, but that it cannot come at the cost of shunning your own traditional food that, your family and your generations grew up eating. There has to be a balance between all of that. So it's great to have access to kale, but you can't forget the other greens that we already have growing literally in our backyards and, farms outside the cities.
And this is what kind of concerns me on a larger scale, because we do live in a country where there are people struggling to make ends meet with food, right? Just getting 3 meals a day, which are nutritious. At the same time, now there are, especially in the cities, more people who are being exposed to these big ad campaigns from these multinational companies.
Right.
So you and I said we do love the occasional Maggie. We grew up eating biscuits like Little Hearts and Britannia Marie, or we call it Marie. I still call it Marie. I didn't know it's Marie. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And Good Day and that kind of stuff. But how do you tell someone who's not had exposure to it, right? Someone who's still like finally got some extra bucks, saying, you know what, I can afford a Domino's pizza. I can afford a pizza slice of whatever, chicken supreme or what. And how do we tell them that's waste? That's ultra processed food. Stick to what your parents eat, which is like good, like ragi mudde with chicken curry or whatever they eat, which is much better for them. How do you tell those kids don't order on Swiggy, or don't go pick up those packets of biscuits because A, it's cheap, cheaper than what we paid for it. Yeah. It's more easily available, and it's in some way it's being promoted everywhere they look online, right? Their favorite celebrities are drinking these drinks, their favorite celebrities are pushing these products, and I find them to be more criminal when you have like an actor from Kannada cinema or Hindi cinema just going and shoving this food down, when they literally get off the ad set and get on like this plan which their nutritionists put together, which probably makes them this ultra human being, and then at the same time just going and selling the shit and pushing it down people's throats. Isn't that the hypocrisy? And when you put that on scale, you already see American children suffering from juvenile type 1 diabetes. You have people with obesity issues. And now they're pushing that entire scenario onto this population, which is 3 or 4 times the size of that. And it's almost, as you said, medical development has been huge since our parents were growing up in the 60s, 70s or 80s. But it's almost like it's creating a machine to take care of these sick people that is going to produce very soon. And that's concerning.
Yeah, but I think there's no way of really stopping it per se. Again, it just comes down to education, where fine, it cannot be all or nothing. You can't go to 2 extremes either.
Yeah.
Maybe finding a balance in between, saying yes, it's cool once in a while to eat a Domino's pizza or have an occasional packet of Maggie or biscuit, but then those can be your in between. You still need to continue your regular meals, even if you're eating something as simple as dal chawal and sabzi. That's still better than eating a pizza for a meal. But you don't have to go to either extreme. You can still try new food and little bit of the processed food, but that's like a way bigger conversation, like you said, right? Because it's all a money game at the end of the day. So the companies producing this, promoting all of this, the celebrities endorsing all of this, they're not really thinking about the impact of the food to the last person in the stakeholders, right? It's called that. So they're not seeing who the last person is to actually consume that in this whole chain of people making these, marketing these, selling these, all of that. It doesn't reach their radar. They're getting the money, right? So that's a whole other bigger conversation to have. But I think that's the problem, right? It comes down to education at the end of the day, and it's sad, right? Because all of this, people spend, like companies across the world spend billions in marketing and packaging and branding to make all of these processed foods more enticing, more addictive, more affordable and accessible, sadly. But imagine if they put even half of that collective power of the money, the brains that go behind marketing, all of that, towards eating healthier. Can you imagine what a generation we would be? Right? But, people are spending money on labs.
Wait a second, you're telling me I don't meet Complan to make me smart?
No, man. But it's the sad part, right? They designed super. So during the pandemic, I happened to do this online program because I was sitting idle about the marketing and the branding side of food, where the food is not even important. It's how you place it, how you sell it, how you pitch it to somebody. And it was an eye-opener as an adult in my 30s, because they were obvious things, but I never made the connection. Like, supermarkets are designed to encourage you to buy packaged and processed food. If you realize now that, I will say it out loud, the veggies and all of that is somewhere at the back or right in the middle somewhere. You have to go through aisles and a whole maze of chips and processed food and
you're easier to get orange juice than oranges. Yeah, absolutely.
Correct.
Yeah.
But all of that is intentionally put right at the back. Can you imagine if they put fresh fruits and veggies and healthier,
Ugh, how
semi-processed
could they
or
do something?
unprocessed ingredients right in front.
Yeah.
Right? Supermarkets are designed like that. And that's a crazy thought if you think of it, right? If you zoom out and you're like, wow, they're designing supermarkets to encourage people to buy junk and
But
not
they're making
the
sure that
other
you
way
get
around.
enough of sugar in your system so you have the energy to go pick up the vegetables. It's all out of
But it's
well-intentioned.
counterintuitive, right? Imagine you're spending, industries and
Yeah.
companies are spending so much money. Can
Yeah.
you imagine if they spend it for good, use that power for good?
I can't imagine, sadly. The thing is that it's maybe call me cynical or call me
No, I am
realistic.
cynical, but
Yeah.
that's a thought I want to put out in the universe. Like, you can still make money. I know it's all
Yeah.
about the money for them,
But you still can do a lot of good by
good. Do that.
making your
Do
profits.
better
Yeah.
things to feed people better food. And I'll be dead sure all the people making, manufacturing, marketing, selling all of these brands, I'm sure they don't eat it themselves.
It's just like social
100%
media,
don't.
right? The guys who created it, none of their kids are on it.
Yeah,
At least
exactly.
to a certain age.
Exactly.
So this
exactly.
comes to a larger question is it's clearly a them versus us, right? In some way,
Yeah.
the people behind, the brains behind these huge corporations, the marketing, the agencies that push it. And it's kind of interconnected, right? I read somewhere that, a company which, like say the multi-billion dollar company investing in all these things, they have money in food, they have money in healthcare, they have money in education, they have money everywhere. So it's kind of like a narrative that is connected, right? You give people this food, you make them sick, you get them coming to your hospitals, and the messaging starts from a young age, right? So that's why I said the narrative early on. But I don't know where to kind of take this, right? Because, the way it's going with climate change being a real threat to crop cultivation, with monocrop farms, with these modified seeds. I'm not saying everything, at least organic farming at this point, cannot match the production needs of the planet, is where I read somewhere. But you still have now seasonal, your seasonal patterns changing, rains not coming on time, water shortages. And this along with this onslaught of this machine pushing out all this media campaigns about certain kinds of food, right, which is good for you or which is not good for you, and then you have these influencers talking about these superfoods and things. So it's kind of like a concerted onslaught onto people's consciousness about what they eat. And as you said very rightly, it's a very personal choice, but it no longer feels like it's what you eat is what you enjoy, and what you should eat goes into your body, right? Because if I eat like a week of sweets for whatever reason, I don't, but if I do, I clearly see it on my skin. I clearly feel a form of my digestion being affected. But that comes from being aware. It comes from understanding. It comes from also being a little older, maybe not wiser, but a little more aware of what I'm putting into my face, right? But how do you, from a young age, when kids are entering this world with all these various forces trying to get, vie for their attention, and they're in schools with, of course, access to tech and the information that tech brings to them. How do you bring back this idea that the food you eat at home, and in many cases the parents don't know either that they don't probably eat the food that their parents ate, right? Yeah. So how do you bring this back and kind of, I wouldn't say make it cool again, but this thing, because if the way we're heading in my mind's eye, I kind of see this thing where in 15, 20 years, we won't have a banana, but we'll have this banana shaped object, which is made with ultra processed materials or whatever they put in factories. It comes out looking like this perfect yellow object, which is shaped like a banana, which is called a banana, but it's not a fruit. It's just a banana, which is made in a factory. And
you're scaring me now. I don't want to live in such a world. I want a world where everything is going back to the
this,
real
no
stuff.
spots. It smells perfect, like banana essence. It doesn't have any of those black spots on it. It's not squishy. It never goes bad. It's got no expiry date, and it gives you the absolute joy of a banana, but absolutely no nutrition. And everyone will be eating bananas because 10 influencers are like, I look so good in a bikini eating this banana, which is made in a factory.
No. I don't want to live in a world like that.
I'm just playing it out there because I feel it's in some way we want that
put
perfection.
Nicer things out into the universe. Don't put this out.
Yeah, I'm just being a bit of a dick about it, but I'm just worried because then you have
Hopefully not. I see little hope because everybody is realizing. Like, slowly, so, in this whole them versus us thing, like you said, right? But I think now it literally has to come down to doing your own research and seeing what works for your body. Like even with this whole diet culture, I'm dead against it.
Yeah.
If you eat everything, I feel special diets need to be followed by people who have specific medical issues.
Yeah.
Where they need to eat a certain way or not eat certain ingredients or things like that. If you have serious medical issues, that's when you need to go on a special diet. But if you are a healthy, average human being, you don't need to go on diets like keto and paleo and whatever, because in the long term, they're actually harming your system more than doing good. Yes, you'll see short-term results with weight loss and everything, but you don't know what they're doing to your system on the inside in the long term, right?
And in some cases, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't many situations, of course, I'm not a medical expert, and if you do have a medical condition which demands a certain diet, do go to a doctor. I want to put that out there very clearly. But in many cases, like diabetes, for instance, isn't that caused by uncontrolled food or certain kinds of food being ingested into your body? I mean, of course, type 1, you're born with it, that's different. But in many cases, it's just bad food that's caused these issues. So can't you manage lifestyle and the food you eat? Can't that determine your health as well?
It can. That's how it should be, right? Food is meant to, like you said, nourishment, but it's also meant to keep you healthy in certain ways. So everything in moderation is great. And it's a learning curve. For me, even at 30-something, I'm still learning how to see what works for me, what doesn't. But I think everything in moderation. Dieting and eating should not have to be a punishment. So these yo-yo things that we all go on saying, okay, during holiday season, we eat like gluttons and then punish ourselves saying, oh shit, now I need to lose weight again.
That's ridiculous.
Try and keep, I know it's easier said than done, but some moderation where you don't have to keep going through cycles of punishing yourself and depriving yourself of food that you like eating, in your regular life, sometimes just be strong and be like, okay, cool, I've already eaten XYZ in the last 2 or 3 days. Today, let me just eat a simple dal chawal or, stir fry meal or something like that. Just find a balance and find what works for you. This whole cookie cutter diet, fad diets, which everyone wants to do, I don't think that's not sustainable, and that's not something that can work in the long term. Like, do diets that are required because you have a medical condition. Don't create medical conditions by going on ridiculous diets.
And that's a strange thing, right? What I find fascinating about Indians is the moment they enter an airport or a railway station or any place when it means the embarking of their holiday, the number of snacks they buy, it's just like they're going, it's like their last destination to nowhere, right? It's just chips and kurkure and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I don't understand this idea of snacking, right? Because it is ridiculous how much we snack not just us, around the world, right? Whether it's chips or in some cultures, they have different kinds of snacks, but deep fried stuff for the most part, which is crunchy and makes you feel, I don't know what, but it's this, I don't know, because, while we, and so you have a background, you're a mixologist as well, right? You've spent time with alcohol, and you told me before we got on the call, growing up, alcohol was not demonized in your family because your father was.
It was my family's bread and butter. We wouldn't, if it was demonized.
You mean your family's whiskey soda? Right, I get it. But no, because there's this thing where you have these people saying so proudly, I'm a teetotaler, yet they have a gut that's bigger than a barrel of whiskey, because they've eaten everything from, processed sugar to refined sugar to like ghee with refined clarified butter, everything going into their body. Yes, they feel so damn good about themselves. This kind of holier than thou glow going, I don't drink liquor. It's like it's against Indian culture. I'm like, but
it's not.
And that's what I find. I want to talk to you about.
If they follow mythology, I think the gods also drank. I don't know, dude, but. I think, but
some of the gods definitely had a beer belly. Now, I'm going to say this at the risk of getting cancelled by certain groups. It definitely wasn't only food. There were definitely some beer belly gods out there.
Yeah, man. But I think this whole also, I don't know if it's just an Indian thing or it happens in other cultures. A lot of your food and lifestyle choices are often associated with your character, which I don't understand. Like, you're all taught, right, when you're younger, smoking, if someone smokes, especially women, they'll lose character, drinking is
yes.
not good, eating non-veg no, should not be friends with people. And
I find that
I grew
baffling.
up with that sort of shit, right? But as I grew older and I started seeing the world and meeting people and crossing paths with different people and forming my own opinions about who is a good person, not a good person. And even with the whole, religious people are great people. Atheists are bad people. But I have seen the spectrum where I'm like, some of my closest friends, women, men, whoever, are smokers. And they're great people. I love them. And then I've met people who are non-smokers and anti-smokers, and they're shitty human beings.
Yeah.
And same thing with the whole religious aspect. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. Why am I even hesitating? But like that, and then I see these religious people who are just really shitty human beings, man.
Just nut jobs, yeah.
It doesn't make you a good person. Your food choices, your life choices have nothing to do with your damn character. And it was such a hard thing to break out of, because I grew up around vegetarians my whole life.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I couldn't even be on the same table as somebody eating meat or fish, because it would make me gag, because I had zero exposure to any of it. And I didn't mean it.
Yeah, it is. And on a very fundamental level, that the smells are something you have to get used to. And that's not
okay.
a prejudice. It's just
but that's still your choice, and it's fine. It does not make you a bad person or a bad family. And
absolutely.
We
Because
grew up with
sometimes you
notions
go
like
around.
you shouldn't eat in their house. They eat non-veg. You can't eat in their house in the same vessels. And I'm you eat in restaurants. No, dude. How do you know if the same plate that you are being served food in right now, the previous person didn't eat non-veg on that plate before it got washed? Like, all these stupid things that are attached to our food and alcohol choices. Everything is good in moderation. Drink, it's fine. It's not a bad thing, and it's not some sin. But drink in moderation. Yes, if you turn into an alcoholic, then it's a bad thing.
So why are we so good at adopting practices when it comes to... okay, first question, I want to ask you this, because you grew up in a family that distributed alcohol, and you probably have an insider's point of view to this. What is the fascinating of Indian uncles with Black Label? Johnny Walker Black Label. Why are we obsessed as a nation by this damn drink?
I think it just became a prestige and a status symbol, right? From, as like, say, coming from a lower middle class or like working class, and you go and buy the quarters and your what are the whiskeys? I don't even want to name brands, but
Antiquity, 8 p.m.
Like all of those. And then one day to be able to afford a whole other segment of alcohol, like Black Label just became
it's amazing.
that icon of status, and I've arrived. It became a milestone of you jumping an economic class, perhaps. Or like it became like an occasion, like, wow, for now I can afford one Black Label and I will drink it only on occasions or share it with someone who is important to me. I think it just became, and I think maybe a little bit of their marketing helped, I guess, to put it in that it became aspirational almost, right? Unintentionally or intentionally, I don't know. But
how much ever you make beyond that money, which allowed you to buy that first bottle of Black Label, which showed a kind of graduation in your affordability of whiskey, even much more money later, it's still Black Label. I'm like, dude, what does this have? But then Black Label
then becomes their default lowest benchmark now. All of those have disappeared. So the Black Label is now your starting point. Saying, cool, I can do this for my regular basis, but they will still buy the more expensive stuff. But Black Label is a milestone that just stays. But then everything below that is now erased.
I find that also quite fascinating, because on one side they'll have the 24-year-old Scotch, or they'll have the single malt, but they'll keep that for their friends just to show that they can afford it. But when no one's looking, they run and drink that Black Label.
It comes down to comfort, I think, at the end of the day, and that whole nostalgia.
It's brilliant. I drink Black Label. I'm just trying to understand my own weakness, right? Because I see my dad sometimes, and he's ordering thing. He's like, we'll try this, and we should drink good whiskey. And then again, he's like, no, we'll just get Black Label. It's almost like Yeah, he's surrendering to his.
Yeah. So I think that has just become like everybody's comfort default, because at one point it was one of those things that everyone aspired to be able to afford on a regular basis. And then I think it's literally just that.
Right. Okay. Now, again, with food and booze, right? With food and liquor, when you look at someone like the Italians or the French, they drink while eating, right? They use, typically it's wine, and even say the British, who are pretty much ale and beer drinkers. Of course, it's kind of food and alcohol go together. Like they have a few pints, they eat, and then they continue drinking, or they don't. And the French eat while they drink, drink while they eat. It's a pretty elaborate evening. I'm not saying every day, but that's also changing. Yeah. But now you look at, of course, that's come to India, right? Where you have people who are wine tasting and the connoisseurs in wine, and another bunch of activists in some hat or another, where they just kind of look down their nose going, oh, you don't know which vintage this is? And I'm like, no, and it's red or it's white. And
it's good or bad. It's literally just that. That doesn't have to have a whole thing attached to it.
But our relationship as a group, I'm saying Indians, it's never been complementary to food. The drinking is always get smashed and then eat whatever comes.
Yeah, but because it was never a social or a cultural thing, right?
Yeah.
Like the other examples you give, drinking was a very social activity with celebrations, with your meals, all of that. Now it's becoming like that with our generation, where we go out with nice meals and order a nice cocktail or a nice wine or beer with our food.
Yeah.
But otherwise, if you look back, it was always, in India, drinking was an activity you do alone in the confines of your house after a hard day of work, or it was a very, you get your quarter and sit in the working class. It was that. It was not a social thing, even with social gatherings, maybe. And
you never drank with your wife, and you never drank with your parents.
Yeah, like men would be in a separate room drinking. Women are outside or in the kitchen. They'd finish their drinking, then they'll come to the table and eat the khana that they're being
pop
served.
Antacids. Yeah.
Right, but it was always it's always a thing where you sit after a long day of working hard, and then you sit alone and you drink, even when there is no occasion.
I find that fascinating because
activity, right?
Like as you said as well, because from as far as I remember like my uncles, my aunts, my parents, all of them having a drink together. Not all of them, of course. Like some of them don't drink because they still have that conservative look.
They sat in the same space while enjoying a drink.
Yeah, but so it was for me.
But that's a relatively newer thing, or maybe a bigger city, or depending from family to family. But otherwise, if you try and look at the bigger populations, always the men just drinking alone in the room.
Absolutely.
In the living room once they're back from work,
And then the last thing you do before you hit the sack is just stuff your face with food, and that's it. Call it lights out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But no, as someone who's intimately involved with both worlds, can we? You already said it's emerging, more and more people doing it, friends going out for a meal. The emphasis is not one or the other, but just have a nice evening, a social outing. But someone who provides both options, like you're a mixologist and you're a chef, and you have experience in both spaces, are we a culture that's heading more towards a balanced kind of, what is the new version of the Indian food, alcohol kind of relationship looking like?
It will depend from place to place. Cities were already there, right? You'll always see everybody out in restaurants eating, drinking together, even home scenes. So I don't think there's a particular, at least I can't see, like there's no particular trend or path as such. It will always depend on where you are. Like maybe tier 2 cities, the culture is different with drinking outside versus drinking in your home. In a city like Bombay, it's different. Bangalore is different. Delhi. I think it just depends on the people, I guess, how much they've traveled.
Because there is definitely still a taboo. Like alcohol is still demonized, right? It is banned in certain states.
I don't understand why, but it is.
That's where I'm coming from.
I think it's a lot that it's associated with character for some reason, Same thing like with smoking and all of that. It's just somehow associated with, directly linked with character, even though it has no logical connection.
I'm the worst human in society, then I drink and smoke.
Especially with women more than men, though, unfortunately. Especially more in the case of women and, than with men. If, women drinks. Now, in cities it's better, but everyone always raised an eyebrow if they saw a woman smoking. And
There's a certain
drinking,
point I get of smugness when it comes to people who don't drink, right? I've observed this when I go for, especially a couple of these disability summits I go to, and I either given a talk or I come out and people are like, oh, are you going to have a drink after this? Because none of them drink. But it's like, yeah, I'm like, of course I am, man, because this is the most boring fucking affair I've been a part of. I need a drink to get away from this.
Yeah.
But it seems like people who don't drink or never drunk or never touched liquor have this sense of smugness. And I think that ties up to what you're saying, this character of people
they
who
just
drink.
somehow think they're superior human beings, and it's fine if they want to feel that way. Whatever helps you sleep at night, it's cool. But just for me, I've reached that point in life. I'm just like, let people do whatever the fuck they want to do.
Yeah.
You be happy not drinking. You be happy being a vegetarian or a vegan. You be happy eating your meat. You be happy drinking your alcohol. Everybody just do and coexist. It has no binding or it has no reflection on who you are as a human being. Like I'm the minority. In all of my friends, I'm literally probably sometimes the only vegetarian there. And I'm perfectly happy surrounded by meat and fish because they're all eating and nobody imposes it on me. And I don't sit and lecture them saying, oh, you shouldn't eat. In fact, I'm more excited. I see something, I'm like, oh, this sounds great. Order it. I want to see what it looks like and I want you to eat it,
And that comes from a sense of appreciation, because when something I can connect with you on is that when I am at a table, and the smells for me are more than the appearance of the food, right? But I'd recently traveled to Thailand, and a couple of friends had ordered the Wagyu stew. And I was just fascinated. This friend was telling me what the meat is like and what it's supposed to be. It's a brisket in some kind of terms. And I was just like, wow. And my roommate as well in the US was a really good cook. And he would get like this big rib cage. And I'm like, dude, don't tell me you're eating that, right? I can fit in that. Like, that's how big this is. But then the way he would cook, the way he would talk about it, when I find someone's true appreciation for the food they eat, it makes me excited, even though I don't have to eat that food. They don't have, and I find that a really nice human trait, right? Saying, I might eat this, but I really appreciate the joy you find in your food.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice way to look at it. That's what you said. And, but
having, just like that's something, as long as somebody's not imposing it on you, you don't need to impose it and make faces. It's their choice and it's their culture and it's what they grew up eating. It's fine
even if you look at
eat
culture
it.
and all those things away from this, it's one individual enjoying the thing he or she puts into their face. I mean, mouth, but I just keep saying face. Sorry. But, this thing of the amount of food we talk about, right? The amount that is out there about food. Like food is an entire category of TikTok reels, is an entire inspiration, is an entire economy.
Yeah.
And it's clearly something which should unite us all, because you and I are vegetarians, but we complement someone who eats meat, because just as the ecosystem goes, that's how balances things. Some people eat meat, some people eat vegetarian, some people eat vegetables, some people eat more fiber, some people eat less fruits. It's just a balance, and how that's how it's been. But it clearly seems like there's a certain set of diets that are being prescribed, and that just doesn't seem sustainable for production of food. And while I'm on that point, what I found encouraging, while I did say we are being forced down certain foods by multinational corporations, but a few months back I went and spoke at this NGO's they had a display at the Bangalore International Center here in Bangalore, and it was very encouraging to meet these people who ran these stalls, because there was one lady who I think is getting all the women in a certain village in Kolhapur together, and they are preserving these old recipes, making it in their own homes and selling it like in various packaging, packaged products. There's another guy going around making only products based out of millet, like millet cookies, millet chips, that's when I felt there is this kind of blend where, while we can retain the ingredients local to the environment, you can also recreate this sense of coolness, like chips, you can take snacks to school, but do it in a way that suits what's available to us, as opposed to just swallowing the entire prescribed way of Lay's chips or Domino's. Like, you can do things like, and we're really good at Indianizing things, right? From English to cars to drinking, we've done it all and done it pretty damn well. So is there a future where, just like how Pizza Hut has a paneer makhani pizza, can we, I still find that the most unpalatable dish ever.
No.
It's just awful. But as someone who's work so closely with food and you love food and you want food to help people and be a cure and be a companion and be something which you can use to live a better life, as opposed to something which either you can do, which kind of ruins your body, or something which you're desperate without.
Yes.
What can someone now sitting listening to us today do about their food choices?
That's a big one.
Yeah,
like I said, right, everything comes down to individual choices. See what works for you. Don't worry about what is the in thing right now. If you think X dish or X ingredient is healthy and you want to eat it and you like it, great, eat it. Again, like I said, everything has to come. There cannot be a generic diet for everybody. There cannot be a cookie cutter approach saying everybody do. There was this phase, right, 2 years ago, everybody was doing keto. Every second person I met was on keto.
Yeah.
How is it working for everybody? It cannot, because each of our systems is different. Yeah. There has to be some amount of trial and error. Eat a few things, don't eat a few things. And you don't have to starve yourself to be healthy or to lose weight. You have to find, like, the only time you need medical intervention in terms of controlling what you eat is when you have a serious medical issue.
Yeah.
But there is no need to harm yourself because you want to lose weight. Yes, all of us want to be healthy and lose weight. There are more sustainable, there are less punishing ways of doing that. It literally comes down to just realizing, and a lot of our mental health is tied in with our food eating habits, right? Again, because food becomes a coping mechanism. Someone resorts to drugs, someone resorts to food, someone resorts to drinking, someone resorts to binge watching TV. Find what is your relationship with food. For some people, it's literally just sustenance. And I admire those people. I also feel sad for them, but I also admire them because they don't feel the joy in eating things, and they don't feel the joy in finding a new ingredient or a new dish in some other place. They just want to eat because it's fuel. It's like filling diesel or petrol in a car, saying, "Gaadi chalane ka hai, to petrol dalo." Right? It's a great quality, but I also feel sad because that's my relationship with food. I get very excited when I see a new vegetable or a new fruit or a new snack. Anywhere I go, like my travel, everything is always designed around food. I have a list of places, like iconic places or local places that I want to eat at, for places I've never even been to. But then I give those lists to other people that when they are going to that city or country,
Right.
That's my relationship, and it's taken me a lot of work and therapy and everything to understand, like, oh shit, these are my pitfalls when it comes to food. So it's literally that everyone has to just do a lot of trial and error and, what is the word? Self-actualization, self-exploration, and just give yourself time to find a stable way of eating where you can eat everything, not have to punish yourself, not have to eat food that makes you feel like a patient in the hospital to, be healthy and lose weight. You can eat great tasting food and it can still be healthy. That gap slowly is bridging. Like, people always associate diet food and healthy food with like bland, tasteless, cardboardy stuff. It's not true anymore. It wasn't true back then either, but people are just realizing that now, and chefs are finding better ways to create healthy food without it having to feel like a drab and saying, shit, ye khana padega pet bharne ke liye types,
Yeah.
So
it
comes down to each person. There's no thing for an entire group of people.
And there's another idea that we load it with flavors to make it rich, but sometimes the simple flavors are so tasty, right? As you said, like the dal chawal.
Just a well-made dal chawal. I learned that very late in life. Can you imagine? I started eating dal chawal after I was 24. For various childhood traumas, which it's fine. I don't want to get into it.
Yeah.
But like just simple, that's another thing, that the stereotype that I get really annoyed with, right? When I tell people I'm a chef or I love food so much and everything, they just automatically think that I'm a snob and I only want to eat fine dine, fancy things, and like my standards are very high. And I'm like, no, for me, good food does not mean fine dining or expensive or exotic food. Good food is just something that tastes nice. It could be something as simple as somebody's ghar ka dal chawal or a raste ka chaat. I eat everything. I eat everything from roadside food, sing chana, to the best fine dine food. But just it needs to taste good and be worth my money. I don't believe in these measly portions of something and pay $1,000 for like one bite of something.
Yeah, no, because there was
That
this
whole
thing.
side of the food industry pisses me off a little bit, to be honest. I might ruffle feathers by saying this, but still.
No, I think that's extremely fair, because there's this notion of eating at a 5-star being the equivalent of drinking your first black label.
Sometimes 5-star food is shit food. You're not paying for the food. You're paying for the ambience and you're paying for the brand. You're not paying for the food itself.
But now, like growing up, there's this restaurant called the Royal Afghan in Bangalore at the ITC, right? And they're really popular for like their kebabs and their dal makhani, and it's called the dal bukhara, right? It's a symbol of the ITC's Nawabi cuisine, or whatever the cuisine is called.
Yeah.
And that used to be, birthdays, anniversaries. We used to go there, but no, I can no longer eat that. It's just too rich. It's not as tasty. It was the idea that was sold more than the actual taste. But like now, sometimes, of course, we order in occasionally. But like there's this thing, my granddad, when he used to live alone towards the end of his life, he used to make this dish, which was basically this boiled rice, which is not red rice, not brown rice, but it's the actual boiled rice. It's with the husk. Mm-hmm. There's a dish we call ganji, which is in different forms.
Yeah,
it's called
we all have a version. Every culture has a version. Even ganji, in other countries, like kanji is Korean. Exactly. And we all have a version of that.
So this boiled rice, so basically what he used to do is, because he couldn't be bothered, he would just throw a bunch of vegetables, dal, into this ganji dish, into the boiled rice, put a bunch of vegetables, let it pressure cook for like how many whistles, and he just opened the spot, and suddenly the small flat he lived in would just be filled, because we would go on Sundays to visit him, with this beautiful smell. And sometimes now I'm just like, let's just make that dish. And I sometimes just sit in the evenings and eat that, and it's so fulfilling. Like you have this warmth in your belly, and a few black labels down. You eat that, and not just for nostalgia. It's actually a very fulfilling dish. It's just tasty. It's got everything you need. It's got rice. It's got your veggies. It's got flavor. It's got that heat. I like eating hot like a stew in the evening, and I really like that. And and it's really fascinating to talk to someone whose journey with food has been so intimate and long-lasting. Yeah. And on that note, could you tell me and people listening why you took the decision to go down this path of writing this book about food wastage and how to manage that?
Right. So like we discussed some time back, right, in our conversation about this whole concept of food waste, where it was such a narrow view of food waste, leftover food. We forgot the whole other stage of growing till it reaches our table, and forget all of that also, right? Just in your own fridge, from the cooking, like pre-cooking process, when you're prepping your ingredients, right? When you're peeling your veggies and chopping your fruits and chopping things. If you see a pile, if you stop throwing it in the trash right away and you just like let it pile up in a plate or a bowl while you're prepping your ingredients, you'll see a decent chunk is left behind. And it's perfectly edible ingredient, perfectly nutritious food, which again our previous generations, our grandmoms, everybody who cooked then used every possible edible part of a fruit or vegetable that they knew how to use, right? Whether it was chilka of like different types of gores like parval and karela and all of those things, you can make a chutney out of it.
Right.
Sorry, what?
Chilka being the seeds, right?
No, chilka is the skin, sorry.
The skin, okay.
Yeah, the peels, right?
The peels,
and
right.
It's perfectly edible. Again, with cauliflower, like I gave the example earlier, the green stalks that come with the cauliflower, they're called danthal in Hindi. Mm-hmm. And danthal ki sabji has been a thing in Punjabi food forever. It's not, so these are not new concepts. It's just that our generation has just forgotten it because we don't have the time and inclination or the know-how, because we never bothered to sit and learn recipes from our grandparents. So that big gap, generational gap is there. So we never realized that that's the things that we can eat. Fast-paced lives, lack of knowledge, all of that put together. So, the book has a mix of some traditional recipes, but also some new age recipes using the same kind of parts of fruits and veggies. So so the book is a mix of some old traditional stuff from different cuisines within India, and then some slightly westernized, slightly modern recipes to just make it more exciting for people. And the whole idea was to kind of change the branding of waste, where if you look at it as waste, you'll obviously think it's waste and you won't know what to do with it, right? But if you, like say maybe 10 years ago or whatever, things like broccoli, baby corn, asparagus were new to us in India. So chefs, home cooks, everyone who was fond of cooking always found creative ways of using these so-called exotic ingredients, snow peas and, all these things that started coming into India or started being grown here, or even herbs, rosemary, basil. All of that is not native to us.
Yeah.
But everybody was so excited from their travels, from watching other international TV shows, books, that they found creative ways of using those ingredients.
Yeah.
So if we start looking at these so-called waste parts of fruits and vegetables as ingredients and not call them waste or trash or useless, you'll automatically start thinking of fun, creative ways to use it in your daily food. And it doesn't take up any extra time. None of them require some additional prep or anything. It's literally the same effort that it takes to cook your regular daily food. And this book can become like your daily reference book, where these recipes are very basic or template recipes. Then you can build on them based on what you like and what your creativity kind of comes up with. So these are just like your ABCs. So I tell people that when they ask what the intention of the book is, right? This is the ABCs of using up waste in your kitchen. Once you learn the alphabet, you can form words and sentences on your own. It's like learning a language. You learn the alphabet, learn a few words, and then practice making sentences, from sentences to paragraphs, paragraphs to pages, books. So that's the idea behind this book. Just learn simple things. I included some cocktails to make it a little more exciting.
Hey.
So yeah, that's the idea behind the book. It's just a simple reminder and to bring people back to their ABCs of food in their homes. That's it.
Well done. So what's the book called and where can people get it?
It's called the No-Waste Kitchen Cookbook. And you find it in most bookstores across the country and even online.
So do you have a drinking manual along that saying the Get Wasted Drink book?
I wish. That could be the next one.
That should be the accompanying PDF.
Yeah. That can be the next stage.
Brilliant. Yeah. Arina, thank you so much for sharing all your
pleasure.
insights and your opinions and your experiences with food and alcohol, and kind of helping people decide and just sort of giving them some sense of, you know what, it's my body, what I decide to put into it. This is what I can do. It's experiment with it. There's no good, there's no bad, there's no right, there's no wrong. And it's a journey that you can explore with yourself. So thanks for helping people figure that out and giving that message. And I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It was a great conversation, and I hope kind of people can learn from it or just take away something or maybe teach us something new.
Absolutely. Look forward to that. Yeah. And I look forward to getting a hold of your book, and everyone listening can get a copy as well. I'll put the description in the link below. Or what I meant to say is I put the link in the description below. I just lost the plot. Well, it happens when you talk so much, I suppose.
Yeah.
All right. Cheers, Arina. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thanks.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you liked what you heard, please do check out the other episodes on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And I would much appreciate it if you could like the video, share it with people who you think might enjoy it. And of course, do subscribe to the channel, because it will help me and the podcast grow and reach more people just like you. So thanks again. Appreciate it.